January 18th, 2022. Welcome, everyone. First up, I'm going to need an approval of the minutes from Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021. Deputy Mackenzie, Councillor Lowe, thank you very much. And first up, I see our presenter here. So it is our item 1.2, Growing in St. John series. And we are going to be led and have our guest introduced by the wonderful Greg Cutler. So Greg, you take it away.
Thank you very much, Councillor Killen, and good afternoon to the rest of the members of Growth Committee. I am pleased to introduce our Growing in St. John presenter for today, Darren McLeod. Darren, since 2019, has been the Executive Director of the New Brunswick Medical Education Foundation. And for those who aren't aware yet, the foundation is dedicated to the attraction, retention, and engagement of New Brunswick residents to become our future doctors. Prior to joining this organization, Darren held various lead roles at the St. John Regional Hospital Foundation, Atlantic Ballet of Canada, and the Beaverbrook Gallery, among others. After spending time in Ontario, Manitoba, and Alberta, Darren has made his way back to St. John and now calls the South End home. And just in addition to his professional role, which keeps him very busy, he also spent 5 years on the board of the St. John Community Arts Board and served 3 years as the chair. So with that, I know Darren is ready to go, so I'm going to turn it over to Darren for our Growing in St. John presentation.
Great. Thank you very much, Greg. And thanks, everyone, for allowing me a few minutes to talk about what we do as a foundation. There is a PowerPoint presentation. I would honestly suggest just go through it at your leisure and provide some details. We're a foundation that was incubated in the Greater St. John area over 10 years ago with the idea that one of our biggest challenges in this province, and certainly in this region, and a real barrier to growth, is access to healthcare. And in particular, the area that this foundation is putting some priority in, though we support students through scholarships, through all facets of the healthcare system in practicing as physicians or specialists, is family medicine. When we've got over 40,000 people on the waiting list in the province for it, we know, and I know talking to business leaders and others, that the number one barrier to the attraction of investment and business into the region and growth is access to doctors. There's been numerous times that I know that has been companies that have looked at the region, and certainly individuals, and when they find out that the waiting list is up to 5 years for a family doctor, they tend to move on to greener pastures. So it's not an unknown storyline. I've lived in the province for 15 years. I was first in Fredericton, and I've now been in St. John coming on 8 years. It's a common story, but we're here to basically help. And what we do is we provide scholarships up to 4 years for a student to go to med school with the provision that they do a return to service with us. So since our inception in 2010, we have supported 168 students in the province. We have 154 in return to service. We have certainly the most applicants for years has come from the Greater St. John area and City of St. John because the foundation was incubated here. We are now pan-provincial, but we still get more student applicants than we can possibly fund. Last year, we gave out 56 scholarships for $382,000 across the province, but we had 112 applicants. So we continue to turn down talent in this province who, my fear is, they will go somewhere else. And they do. There's greener pastures. We are very lucky to have Dalhousie, New Brunswick medicine here at the UNBSJ campus. We partner with them. I would say the majority of our scholarships, not all, but the majority are actually through that because it was the natural sort of synergy being the medical school here. But an average student that's leaving med school, going into family medicine right now from DelMed NB, is coming out with about $250,000 of debt. So what we do is, depending on the donor, depending on the investment that be it individual or corporate or a consortium of interested entities and individuals do, is we work on the premise of $5,000 a year or more, $5,000 sort of the cut line we find for return to service scholarship. It gets students to stay here or come home. We have students in medical schools all across the country. We have currently, right now, 31 doctors practicing out of our cohort. We have 30 in the residency program right now and 14 graduating this year. And we are working on a program that we're launching right now. We're actually in discussions with one of the, possibly two of the 7 health zones, is what can we do with our students in the residency program? We know that year 5, it's year 5 and 6. Year 5 is when a student is in family medicine or preparing to go to family medicine. It's the opportunity to get them into a community or a region in the province. So we are looking at a way of setting up, hopefully, agreements with regions across the province and partnerships to get students into those areas that they would pledge a 4-year commitment. We're just working out the optics financially on what that would look like. The town of Hampton and some other municipalities have been doing investments into attraction, retention, and frankly, courting new physicians for years. Hampton has been doing it since 2006. I'm talking to a couple other municipalities. I know the city of Dieppe is looking at creating a scholarship through us because there's an interest, again, with a fast-growing city on what they can do to keep their own students in the province, in the city, and return. We have been at this for 10 years. We continue to grow. We're about 8.5 million invested, which sounds like a lot, but honestly, we probably need to go to about a $14 million foundation to be fully self-sufficient. But we bring and we keep students here. I can't tell you how grateful it is to get the student updates to donors and to the community. There's been some press on us. I really wanted to illustrate what we do because I know from my own experience and certainly from those that are in the same boat. I'm thankful I have a family doctor, but I've been in that boat and many others continue to be, is the number one issue I'm finding in this province. There's multiple issues, of course, but we've got this unique story from a growth perspective. We are a net benefit of COVID right now in the region and right across the province. We've got significant numbers of people moving into the province. My concern is at some point they're going to leave because they're not going to wait 5 years for a family doctor and they're going to move on to somewhere else where that opportunity exists. We need to look after the people that live here and work here and are a part of the community so they have access to a family physician. And it's the number one challenge to growing business or attraction of business into the region. I've talked to many stakeholders who illustrate that issue time and time again, is what can we do to get access to family care in the region? Because it's not just the executive leadership, it's employees that will not relocate here. And I mean, I'm going to use other cities as an example, but somebody I know that owns a large manufacturing company in Dieppe in the Moncton area is willing to pay to move their staff from the UK and Alberta here, but they won't come because they know it's a 5-year waiting list for a family doctor. So I'm here to really just talk about what we do, what the impact is. The presentation you can read at your leisure. I would rather you kind of go through that, and if you have questions, but really that we've been a partner for 10 years and somewhat unknown. I'm trying to change that storyline in the last 2 years. I'm their first full-time ED to really get out across the province and where we're based, which is the greater St. John area, to talk about what we do, and that from a growth perspective, we can be an exceptionally good partner in that story of what do we do to grow municipalities. And one of them is access to healthcare, whether it's specialists or family physicians. And we know family physicians is certainly the burning platform right now. And I really want to there's multiple numbers in here, but the point being is that each year as I kind of work through the donor process of growing scholarships, we grow the amount of scholarships we can offer. But we are also on average each year turning down half the applicants, and many that we turn down are from the St. John area as well, simply because it's a capacity issue. So I wanted to really just sort of roll out what we do, what the impact is, and talk about how we sort of fit within the growth strategy that I think you and every other municipality is looking in terms of what they can do to build a better place to live and work and attract. And right now we're in that perfect storm, ironically, through COVID, where we've got people moving in at significant numbers and we want them to stay. And to me, access to a physician, a family physician first and foremost, is going to be paramount to that success.
Thank you so much, Darren, for your presentation and raising these important points. So I'll open up the floor. So I guess we have Councillor Harris up first.
Overview of what you're doing with the foundation, Darren. I got 3 kids. Wife, we don't have a primary care provider. We've been here 6 years. We've been back from Ontario. I'm from here. And we had a doctor, and they fell through the cracks, and actually they were dismissed for whatever reason within Horizon Health. But we've been back on the waiting list, and one of my kids is 6 months old, and we just got told last week that due to COVID, our introduction to our new nurse practitioner, that's going to be that primary care provider eventually, got pushed back till March. So we still haven't even met them. Anyway, it's a severe issue, and as far as my view on council, my fear is all this development is going to lead to a bunch of buyer's remorse. When you get a bunch of people who are moving here and they're used to, in Ontario, I had a primary care provider and doctor within 8 months. So, there's a lot that goes into staying and moving, and I guess the question, for us, council, I think it's something that we're looking at with our UNB expansion of the health sciences and services project there. But more than that, we have to make sure we're building units for families that are attractive to families. And I think we heard from Mike Randall in close, and we're going to hear from him again, and how, for immigrants too, what types of units are we building, and how does that make us a family destination? So anyway, I think it's all very informative. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Mayor Reardon.
Thank you. Darren, I'm curious as to how you rank the applicants, if there's any ranking system of how you use it. And then if you keep track of those applicants, like after their 4 or 5 years, whatever it is that you offer at subsidy or whatever to them, and do you look at if they exit New Brunswick at some point in time? Is there an exit interview? Is what I'd be curious about.
Okay, I can answer probably both of those. Yes, we do track all of our students. Of our 168 that we've had since our inception in 2010, we've only lost 6 students out of that whole timeline, which I would say is pretty good retention return on our investment. Out of that, and they've left for a host of reasons: family, marriage, career. Of those 6, 4 have voluntarily repaid their scholarships back. I mean, it's an incentive to them, especially if you're a new doc. A tax receipt's a tax receipt, and anything can be beneficial to help reduce your overhead in a new practice. So we do that. Our grants committee, it's a 3-week process. So May 31st each year is our deadline. We have a grants committee of up to 5 members who rank all the students based on, well, first and foremost, it's your academic performance. You can't get into med school unless you have an undergraduate. In most cases, they have 2. They're extraordinary achievers. They put me to shame when I look at them at probably age 22 on what they've got on a CV. We rank them on gender, on region, on linguistics, so French, English. And the big thing I think that really underlies with us, and I from now being through this 3 times, is excuse me, is the looking at them from what they do from a volunteerism. What do they do to give back to their community? And again, most of them put me to shame. I think sitting on 2 boards and full-time job is enough. Some of them are probably on like 5 different committees, but it's really quite remarkable. So we really do rank them. We keep in touch with our alumni. So our alumni each year is asked to provide a letter, or what we're doing this year with some of our donors is setting up video meetings so they get to meet them even if they're a doctor, to continue that relationship building, that investment that they made into this future doctor is there in perpetuity. And the students that do leave, we absolutely do an exit interview. Why did you leave? And we've got 2 that have recently left. One's in Calgary, one just left to Ontario last year, so we're following up with her and finding out why. And I think it might be in her case, it was a specialty opportunity that was in child psychology that just, for whatever reason, didn't work out here.
That's great news. It's interesting because for New Brunswick, just to retain any of its youth is an issue for us. We're going to talk about immigration, and it's hard for us to hang on to our own kids. So anyways, that's good news. Thanks very much for the update. Really.
And I must say, a quarter of our last year's scholarship recipients, a quarter of them are all children of first generation immigrants in the province. So that was nice to see.
That's nice. Yeah. Yep.
Fantastic. Darren, thank you so much for coming and joining us here online today. And hopefully we can spread the word and, get more doctors wanting to stay here in St. John, which would be great for a number of reasons. So thank you so much. And all right, so can I get a motion to receive and file for information? Councillor Harris and Deputy McKenzie. All right, thank you so much, Darren. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much. All right, so carrying on, we have item 1.3, which is our immigration strategy consultation. So we're going to hear a presentation here and have a little bit of an engagement session. So I'm going to take this over to Valentin Botiniski for an introduction.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Your Worship, City Manager, members of the committee. I'm very happy to say that the immigration and settlement strategy for St. John is moving ahead, and I'm very happy to introduce the two people from the team that are helping us develop this strategy, Mike Randall and Gary Tasker from the company called Portfolio Solutions. Portfolio Solutions, they're based out of Moncton. They have a wealth of experience and expertise in developing strategies, municipal strategies, growth strategies. They are, if I'm not mistaken, they're currently working with the 8 cities in New Brunswick in similar areas. They did a strategy for the Economic Development Agency in Moncton. Their CV is long. I'm not going to take all the time just listing their achievements. I'd better just hand the floor to them, and they can tell us more about the stage the strategy development is on at the moment and what were the highlights they've come across while working on it. Thank you. Mike, and carry over to you.
Thanks very much, Valentin, and thanks to the committee for inviting us to share where we are in the process. As Valentin said, we're really about midway through the process, and I'll just I'm going to share a presentation quick just to take viewers through where we've been and the steps we have left to follow. And it's still not working, and maybe there was, I know somebody has the committee, the deck. Could someone maybe share that, Valentin or David, if possible? And look, I'll just continue because it's not imperative that we have this deck, and it is online for folks to present that. I understand. Oh, there we go. And maybe we could just jump into slide 3 and go forward. Really, just quickly want to take you through today the strategy development process, some strategic discussion on the key pillars that we've identified and key next steps, and maybe just go forward to slide 5. Very quickly, we're following a 4-step process that we apply to many of the strategies that we develop. It starts with discovery, and I must say that this is really building on such enormous amount of work that the city, the growth committee itself, and staff and the St. John Local Immigration Partnership have already done. We're building, this is a part of your Succeed and Stay program that was really launched back in 2018, 2019. It includes a comprehensive immigration survey, and we're building upon all of this data that was put together. Of course, a big foundation piece for the strategy moving forward is the population growth framework, as well. The St. John region's new conversations back from March 2021, the province's population growth strategy, and other documents that we've really built upon. That was our beginning. Then we decided to go back out to a number of stakeholders, dozens of stakeholders across the ecosystem in St. John, and to verify gaps that were identified earlier in the process, and to build upon those and seek input on terms of what key stakeholders believe we should be doing in St. John to drive immigration forward. We've put together, as we said, the draft recommendations and action plan, and now what we're doing is going back to all of those stakeholders to seek their input, to get verification and acceptance on the suggested leads in terms of who is accountable and who should be leading each of these. And that will form a final draft of recommendations and action plan. And then we'll work with the St. John Lippen staff to really put that into operations and look over the next decade on how that strategic plan can be operationalized. If we could jump ahead a couple of slides there. Just to, I guess, reiterate the gaps that were clearly identified both in the early engagement and verified in the engagement that we've just recently undertaken is key areas, and that included information and good data and information on the accessibility of services and the integration of immigrants into the city of St. John and how effective that's working and who's responsible for what. Collaboration was another gap area in terms of making sure that we're really eliminating overlap and duplication, and that we understand who within the ecosystem is responsible for what, and that we're not all trying to do the same thing, but that we're ensuring that we offer all of the services required. Doing a better job on attraction and positioning the city of St. John and telling the St. John story, especially as it relates to families. Employer and community engagement. We've seen you've got some amazing employers in the city of St. John who have done tremendous job at immigration, but there's also employers who have struggled to access the immigration pilot program, and how do we better coordinate that? How do we better integrate employers into the conversation? How do we ensure that we match immigrant attraction with labor force needs and workforce needs, and make sure that those two are working hand in hand? And then finally, a real gap in international student transition to becoming permanent residents in the city of St. John, and how do we better improve that? So if we could move forward. So built on all of those things, we really have come forward and building on your population growth framework, we've come forward with a recommendation on a vision and mission as it relates to St. John's immigration strategy moving forward. And the vision is that St. John become the destination of choice for newcomers and their families in New Brunswick. And the mission would be that Greater St. John immigration partners are committed to making St. John a welcoming, inclusive, and opportunity-filled region for immigrants coming to New Brunswick. And we'll be validating this as we go through engagement over the coming weeks with a myriad, again, of stakeholders across the ecosystem, and we'll refine that as needed and come back to you with a more final document as we progress towards March and the finalization of the strategy. Moving forward. A number of themes have really emerged through all of our conversations, and dozens of ideas, as you can imagine. In fact, the draft recommendations, there are well over 50 of those, but broader themes, that have emerged include immigration opportunities for St. John, especially around family, a better immigration story, targeted immigration attraction. We can't be everything to everyone, and there really are key targets from a workforce needs and labor market needs assessment to international student identification to priority sectors that are emerging within vision and the opportunities of growth in the city of St. John. How can we better target immigrants to really integrate into that? Newcomer community integration, and this is such an important element in this conversation. How do we better integrate newcomers immediately into the St. John community? How do we build upon communities of interest and cultural communities that already exist, and better define those and make sure that they're more sustainable? How do we address broader social issues? And certainly Mr. McLeod identified those in his presentation. Access to a family doctor is one of them. Access to housing and not only affordable housing, but housing that is really meets the needs of immigrants and other broader social issues. How do we address those as part of this conversation? And so these pillars have formed that foundation for the strategy. And if we move forward just quickly again, next slide. We've really broken that down into some 3 key strategic goals with some sub goals, but the 3 strategic goals obviously are attract new people to St. John, enhance the newcomer experience, and retain immigrants. And as part of that, under attraction, we want to promote St. John better as the city that offers world-class education, excellent career opportunities, significant business development opportunities, but really focusing on that family and community. We want to work with the province and the government of Canada to tell a better St. John's story to prospective immigrants. We want to better align immigrant attraction to labor market opportunities and priority growth sectors, and become growth ready in terms of housing, infrastructure, job market, and community services. On enhancing the experience, we want to provide a no wrong door approach to immigration in the city of St. John. We believe that will be a competitive advantage for you in the immigration competition that exists in Canada. We want to create a better understanding and engagement by St. John residents on the need and opportunities associated with immigration. We think it's so important that we also educate St. Johners about the value that immigrants bring to the city and how they'll grow our economy and enhance our quality of life. We want to create a better understanding and engagement by employers in St. John on the opportunities associated with immigration, and that immigration can solve so many of their labor needs. And we need to do a better job at coordinating settlement services to meet all immigrant needs while eliminating that unnecessary overlap and duplication. And finally, on the retention, we want to invest in the creation of communities of support. You're doing that now. Staff is really committed and working on that now. We need to build on that and then provide ongoing integration and settlement services. And a lot of studies have shown that it's really it's for 4 years after they come, we need to maintain that so they don't at some point in time make a decision, the unfortunate decision to leave and move to another part of Canada. If we could go forward. So the other part is this is a 10-year strategy, and with over 50 recommendations, the key is to operationalize this. So we've started to prioritize actions, and part of this first draft is really looking at a 3-year prioritization that really looks at establishing that one-stop shop, that we launch a targeted attraction-focused campaign, that we address adequate housing needs, we improve credentials recognition, we develop and launch immigration communications campaign and really reinforcing why immigration matters in the city of St. John, develop and implement a family buddy program that we believe will really enhance that family experience and enhance the focus and positioning of why St. John, when our provincial government and federal government partners are out attracting people to Canada and to New Brunswick. So those are the priority actions, and that's a very quick overview of the work that's been done to date. I just would go forward a couple of slides to show you where we're headed next. And this really breaks it down to April, when we would come back in front of council for final approval of strategy, but a number of steps in between. I won't go through those, but it's really about engaging all of the ecosystem stakeholders, getting their buy-in, making sure they see themselves in this strategy, that they accept ownership where it's been allocated, and that we refine it to ensure that this strategy is doable and achievable over the next decade and achieves the goals of the city of St. John and of this committee. So, Madam Chair, I'll pause there and we can maybe eliminate that sharing and I'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Randall. I really love this direction that you're taking with us, and the timeline is an exciting spring ahead on this topic. So let's start off with Mayor Reardon.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Randall. Mike, I'm just curious. We talked about allotment. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, do we know what our numbers are coming down? I'm just curious because the federal government has this $35 million coming in for resettlement over X number of years, and how do we impact that even as a province?
Yeah, it's a great question, Your Worship. And the truth is, if we add up all of the goals of each of the larger cities and even some of the smaller cities in New Brunswick and other communities, our allocation isn't large enough to meet the goals that have been set by the individual communities. So part of this, and it's work that happens by your staff every single day, integrating with other immigration officers and immigration leads within the other municipalities. But by developing a strategic plan and each of the municipalities, especially the three larger cities, moving forward with the development of these key strategic plans, one of the things we show the provincial government, who in turn can show this to the federal government, is that we are committed, that we have a plan, that we are working together to grow the population of New Brunswick, to grow the individual municipal populations. And I believe fully that through that concerted effort and integrated effort, we'll do a good job at convincing the government of Canada that we need to increase the allocation to New Brunswick, and that each of the cities is committed and committed resources and funding to really grow the immigration numbers in this province, and are prepared to support that throughout its evolution.
Excellent. And I know that this is a work in progress, but I'm just going to throw out there my vision. Would be to be the most multicultural city in the province of New Brunswick. I was reading a little bit actually about Toronto, and I believe it's one of the most multicultural and cosmopolitan cities in North America, with over 50% of its population identifying as a recognized minority group. So I think it's a tall order, but we could go right from there onto the most multicultural city on the East Coast, etc. So we could maybe.
I think it's an excellent vision, and I think it's one that is rooted in family. And one of the things we're really hearing a lot as we went back and talked to many immigrants in St. John and those that were in St. John and others is there's a family component here. And look, I can attest as a former St. John resident and my time as the morning news guy at K100 Radio living in St. John, it's a very family friendly city, and we need to build upon that, and we need to ensure that we tell that story better.
Thanks for your work. Appreciate it.
Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Chair Killen. Mike, this was an excellent presentation. I have a question, though, on the priority actions. The priority number 3, address the adequate housing needs. Is there a strategy that's been used in other places that we can adopt here in St. John for that?
There are some strategies that have been implemented in other jurisdictions, Councillor. Some of the recommendations, and this builds upon the city's housing strategy that was just recently released, and actually builds upon some work that Her Worship is doing at the 8 cities level as well. One of the things that is apparent is we need to change the conditions for developers and apartment owners and builders. We're going to ensure that we have an adequate supply of adequate housing for immigrants. So it's not only about affordable housing. Many immigrant families, building on that family theme, are looking for 3- and 4-bedroom apartments. They're not interested in ownership. And this dynamic is something that is really, there's a shortage of that availability across the province of New Brunswick. So we're putting forward some recommendations, Councillor, pilot project recommendations and some others that would have the city work with the province, potentially looking at tax incentives, building incentives, elimination of the non-owner occupied taxation specifically for these kinds of developments, building upon, and work that we've done with the in outreach to the Apartment Owners Association. I think there are opportunities that exist. I think we have to think outside the box a little bit. I think New Brunswick's situation is unique in many ways to New Brunswick, and we need to build on our strengths, and we need to look at unique ways to promote the building of a sufficient supply of adequate housing for immigrants.
Great. Thank you very much, Mike.
Sure.
Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair Killen. Through you to Mike. Excellent. Again, like John said, presentation really comprehensive, very helpful to see all this. Something I'll probably be referencing a fair bit. Two things that come to mind. I know a number of months ago, I had a member submission on the council floor just discussing Whether or not we should be asking, our city manager to be advocating for the establishment of a Ministry of Urban Affairs and Housing, to get that under a singular portfolio, because the needs of cities are so unique in the landscape of New Brunswick, as you would know if you work in 8 cities. And also tying that to housing, because those are, again, quite connected. I see immigration fitting there too, as far as urban affairs. Not that rural New Brunswick won't have an immigration strategy, but it's just something worth pondering, how the province can take that and give a minister that sole responsibility and make that their sole deliverable, rather than burying these as like sub hats that ministers wear under other things like social development, where NB Housing is, or whether it's immigration, which is what Minister Dunn, who's also minister of 2 other things, wears. So it's apparent to me that we have that coordination failure, because nobody is really quarterbacking this as a main thing. They're all working it off the side of their desk. And so I'd love the city to be able to kind of play that advocacy role if it's something that was valuable. The other question, the question I had is, as somebody who was building, I don't have a company anymore, but I was constantly trying to connect contractors in this city with available labor force. You mentioned that you laid some of that connection point out in the presentation. I'm just curious, from the level of assessment you've done, do we have strong connection points from the skilled trades industry to immigration workforce? And it doesn't have to be that people are coming in licensed as electricians and carpenters and plumbers, but even just as general laborers, which continues to be one of the highest demand jobs in the country. How are we doing there? Is that something you looked at?
Yeah, great question, Councillor. And I think I can say overall in the province of New Brunswick, it's something we struggle with, and this is something we heard from immigrants, was that lack of integration between employers, specific sectors, opportunity identification and availability, access, no clear pathway to find where those opportunities may exist. Clearly a hesitation on the part of employers of going down the path of immigration because of fear, because of unknowns, because of not knowing what it would entail. And having so many different players, it's very hard to corral and bring all of that under a single roof. We're making some pilot project recommendations in the strategy that would have a better integration with the employment sector in St. John. I think you have some leading employers in that city that have become leaders in immigration in this province. I think we need to build on those experiences. But the backbone of our economy is small and medium-sized businesses, and it's not an easy process for those size businesses to access immigration. And so how do we make that easier? And clearly, that's a stronger partnership with ONB, or back to your earlier point, and I know her worship can build upon this, but there is work happening on advocating for a Department of Urban Affairs, even at the 8 cities level, and that's because we're shifting province. For many years, we're a very rural province. I've written a lot on this, but we are, now more than 50% of our population lives within urban centers in this province. Over 85% of our population lives within a 50 or 60 kilometer radius of our key urban centers, and our 8 cities in this province are fundamental and are the economic engines and drivers of our province. And we need to ensure that the challenges and opportunities that are faced by cities, which are different than those faced by our rural communities, and they're all important, but we need a particular focus and voice at a cabinet table to ensure that those considerations are made. So that work is being done, and I think that work would greatly enhance housing, affordable housing, immigration, and other challenges transportation, public transportation, transit, other things, green building, infrastructure development, all of those which actually play a part in attraction and retention of immigrants are key to increasing our opportunities in immigration and building a better story.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mark, and also to Carrie as well for all the hard work here. And like I said previously, we look forward to the next update and when we can, approve these to actions going forward. But for today, I'm going to need a motion to receive and file for information for now. Deputy McKenzie, Councillor Harris, thank you both very much. And thank you again to your team, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Great. Bye now. Okay, so on to item 1.4. We have a strategies update, a verbal update with Phil Ouellette.
Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here today. I've actually have Mark O'Hearn and David Dobbelstein, who are the project leads for the strategic plan for the city market, as well as the Affordable Housing Action Plan, prepared to give a quick update. So I'll ask Mark O'Hearn to give the first update.
Thank you, Phil. Good afternoon, everyone. Madam Chair, members of the Growth Committee. We're pleased to provide an update concerning the Affordable Housing Action Plan, a community project that will address affordable housing in St. John. The project has entered its second phase, with the main deliverable being the development of a St. John housing needs assessment. Our consultants began this phase in early December and will continue working on the various elements of the assessment until it is completed on March 18th. The assessment is using the latest statistical and demographic information available and will feature neighborhood mapping. The primary purpose of the assessment is to identify any gaps in the St. John housing continuum with respect to supply and affordability. The assessment will inform the development of the action plan in the next phase of the project. To support the development of the assessment, the consultants are conducting key stakeholder interviews between January 19th to the 31st and a cross-sectorial focus group engagement between February 7th to the 11th. At the Growth Committee's meeting next month, we will be able to share information about the next phase of this project, which includes a broad stakeholder and community engagement program that is expected to occur between March 21st to April the 8th. The engagement program will include a Growth Committee workshop on March 22nd. Madam Chair, thank you for this opportunity to update the committee on this important community initiative.
Thank you, Mark, so much. Great update.
David.
Thanks, Mr. Ouellette. Good afternoon, members of Growth Committee. This is just a quick high-level update on the progress with the City Market Strategic Plan. So, as most of you know, Council appointed a steering committee in late fall, early winter. And so we had our first meeting in November. Your Worship, Mayor Reardon and Councillor Lower, members of the committee. And so the first meeting was just a simple meet and greet. Get to know who the people are around the table. And then we had a very entertaining sort of meeting to learn about more of the history of the market and some of the great things that have taken place over the years. We've started sharing information with the members of the committee to start socializing them to all the ins and outs of the market. We also gave the members a private behind-the-scenes tour, COVID safe, of course, but we showed them obviously the public areas of the market, but also sort of maybe what I would call the gritty underbelly of the market. Just to sort of share some of the opportunity, but also some of the challenges that we have with operating a heritage building. And then, as I believe committee knows, council endorsed an RFP, and we selected a consultant out of Halifax, a boutique planning and architecture firm with quite renowned FBM, or Fowler Bald Mitchell, in partnership with Key North Urban Development. So staff have since met with the new consultants. We had a kickoff meeting, and we're really excited to start working aggressively on these next steps. So we have a meeting tonight actually with the whole steering committee, and the new consulting firm will be there to start walking the committee through the visioning of where they see the market. What do they think are some of the great things about the market, and what do they think are some of the areas where we need to work on, and just to start obtaining sort of general feedback. And then quickly after that, we're going to start moving into analysis of the market, start looking at under the hood, so to speak, the operations, financial analysis, staffing model, and then we're going to start getting into public engagement. We had hoped to get it done before Christmas, but COVID and holidays and things sort of got in the way, and we actually had a lot more interest through the procurement process that we had to follow through. So, but we're not really behind at this point. We're still sort of where we should be at this point, and we're excited to keep moving forward. And again, there's going to be, we anticipate a good meeting this evening. So that's the update. Happy to take any questions as well.
Thank you, David. Any questions from the committee for about either project? All right. Oh, sorry, Councillor Harris, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, slow on the hand raise here. I guess this would be a question on the Affordable Housing Action Plan from Mark. Do we have any, have we had the level of engagement with stakeholders showing up and being involved in the process that we originally set out with? I know on the original spec sheet that we had when the council first approved this, there was quite an extensive list, which I was pretty thrilled about. I've since heard about a number of initiatives that you know, a few other groups have started or done. I'm thinking specifically out of University of New Brunswick. Oh my goodness, with the professor there that's Canada Research Chair for Housing, and I'm just blanking on her name right off the top of my head. But I know she was on that list, and there was a few others. So what's that been like? Are we continuing that trend with stakeholder engagement at the level we had hoped for?
Thank you, Councillor. The short answer is yes. Everything that we had anticipated is still going forward. In this particular phase, we're doing the housing needs assessment, which tends to be a bit of more analytical work. But in this phase, we will be, as mentioned earlier, dealing with some engagement, particularly with the key stakeholder interviews. Most of those will be around the action team itself. We purposely picked the team members who occupied this area in our community with regards to providing social and affordable housing. The other key engagement at this phase will be a cross-sectorial focus group, and particularly with UNB that you mentioned, there is a contact that we've been working with, and we've suggested to our consultants that she be included. Also in that group, given the nature of it, which is meant to be very broad, we want to see a developer, private developer involved as well, in addition to some other groups. Later in phase 3 is the much broader engagement, Councillor. So there we see more interviews, theme focus groups, town halls, community surveys. And with regards to the newcomer strategy that you were looking at just a moment ago, our team is well aware and have looked at the 2021 newcomer housing study that was prepared for the city by Dillon Consultant. And one of the key groups that we identified at the beginning of this project is the newcomers. We want to make sure that we can provide affordable but also core housing, which is to say adequate housing. The study that was alluded to earlier indicates a need for more bedrooms than maybe what typically the market is producing at the moment. So we're well aware of that particular group, as well as a number of other groups, the Indigenous community, and a lot of the other groups that are impacted with social and affordable housing needs.
Great, thank you.
All right. If there is no other questions or comments, I will take a motion to receive and file. Councillor McKenzie, Mayor Reardon, thank you both. And on the question, all good? Okay, thank you. All right, and our final item today is item 1.5, the development update. We have a verbal update as well. And Jacqueline Hamilton, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you, Chair and members of the Growth Committee. I'm pleased to introduce Carrie Smith, who is the Manager of Customer Service for our One-Stop Development Shop. She'll be providing today's update on behalf of the department. And in addition to sharing some news on recent developments, she'll also be releasing an infographic for the overall strong development performance that we've seen for 2021. And you'll certainly see that there's lots of momentum happening, and with many of our growth plans starting to take shape. And we are continuing to see record levels of development. So with that, I won't steal Carrie's thunder, and I'll hand it over to her to share the update this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton, and thank you, Chair. 2021, we saw a really strong year for development. We had our second highest business or building permit value in 10 years at 116 million. And although we were slightly lower in the number of building permits that we received based on the 5-year average, we actually have noticed that the permits are larger in size and scope and complexity. And that really comes through when you look at the number of units that we've seen an increase in at 422 for the year, which is more than double what we've had in the 5-year average. In addition to that, we've had over 1,400 residential units approved through our planning process. And so those will be upcoming projects that we'll see come through likely in 2022, 2023. One other note that we found very interesting was that the number of units that we lost in 2021 was much lower than we've seen in previous years. And I think this really comes down to the work that's been done through our vacant building program, as well as the focus on redevelopment and reinvestment versus demolition. And so we're hoping and anticipate that that trend will continue as we move into 2022. The infographic is attached, and if there's any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. We appreciate that. Very exciting news. Anyone have any comments, questions, feedback here? I'm not seeing anything. All right. Thank you very much. And we'll make sure we all share the infographic there on our social media. All right. So that is actually, we're going to need a motion to receive and file for information. All right, Councillor Harris and Mayor Reardon, thank you both very much. And if that is actually it, so we are going to take a motion to adjourn for today. Okay, Councillor Lowe and Councillor McKenzie and all on the question. All righty. Okay, thank you, everyone. Hope you have a great rest of your day.